If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably because a child you love and care for is differently wired. Are they also struggling in their current educational setting, seen only for what they're doing wrong while longing for positive relationships with peers and others? Envision a world where your child's unique abilities are not just recognized, but celebrated. A world where they can connect with others and their true potential is seen and appreciated. The Strength-Based Assessment Lab's mission is to build a world for your child just like that. Through its innovative approach, it aims to empower students, families, educators, and professionals to create positive, effective, and collaborative learning experiences. Be a part of shaping a brighter future for your child. Visit www.bgs.edu to learn more about what a strength-based assessment could mean for your family. That's bgs.edu.
As an adult, when you are afraid or you have that moment of panic or something happens that's unexpected, that even as an adult, we struggle with what to do in situations. So imagine what that would be like for a child who's maybe even never considered, it never occurred to me that I could get separated from my parents at the zoo.
Welcome to the Tilt Parenting Podcast, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. I'm your host, Debbie Reber, and today I'm talking with Jill Goetz, the owner and early child education specialist at Savvy Parents, Safe Kids, a company with the mission of helping parents learn how to talk with their kids about safety and their safety needs. Jill walks us through how to bring up conversations around safety, specifically the topics of consent and personal advocacy and learning how to listen to intuition with our kids. This is an important topic for parents of all children, but because some differently wired kids can be especially vulnerable since they don't read social situations or social cues as well, helping them foster these skills is an important part of their development. Jill also walks us through the Super 10 Rules for Safety, which are 10 simple but important rules we can share with our children to help them stay safe and secure. What I love about these 10 rules is they can be shared and reinforced with our kids in a way that feels positive and not scary or overwhelming. I hope you enjoy our conversation. And before I get to the show, a short reminder, if you're not already signed up for our Differently Wired 7-Day Challenge, I would love for you to join us. When you sign up for the challenge, you'll get an email every day for 7 days featuring a tweak you can make in your day-to-day life to change the way you think, feel, and experience raising your differently wired child. You'll also get a downloadable workbook to use as you go through it, and you'll be invited to a closed Facebook group just for people who've gone through or are currently doing the challenge. Oh, and it is also free. So if you want to join us, you can sign up online at tiltparenting.com/7day. And now let's get on with the show. Hey, Jill, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Debbie.
It was actually Amy Lang, who we had on a couple months ago now to talk about sex education, who kind of reminded me of the great work that you guys are doing through Savvy Parents, Safe Kids. And I thought, I have to bring you on the show to have this conversation. So there's a lot that we can get into. But before we start talking specifically about your work, could you just take a minute to tell us a little bit about your background? Who you are, what you do, how you got into doing this work?
Sure. So I started out as a child development major. And my focus was always working with children and families. So, I enjoyed time as a preschool teacher. I worked as a center director and, kind of fought through the challenges of accreditation and keeping up with licensors and working through kind of all of the politics around some of those things. After I got my master's in education, administration, and supervision, I actually went on to become an administrator for a local school, a private local school that had a K-8 program. And I enjoyed that for quite a long time until I had my own son. And then I was home for a few years. And just kind of looking for what is the next thing going to be? Am I going to stay home with him? Is there something I can do from home? And at the time, I found myself working for an online startup. And through that online startup, came in contact with Amy Lang at Birds, Bees, and Kids, and also came in contact with Kim Estes, who is the founder of Savvy Parents, Safe Kids. And she and I just connected right away, and we had a lot of fun, and all our phone conversations were 3 times as long as they should have been to answer little conversations or little tidbits or little questions. And so at some point, I found myself ready to maybe look for something outside of my home and outside of my own family again. And Kim stepped right up and said, "Hey, you should be teaching classes. You should be sharing, everything that Savvy Parents, Safe Kids has to share with other people, and, just really letting me know how that was right in line with my passion for working with children and families." And so I've been here for 3 years now and just really enjoying that. During the day, I'm home with my son and I'm answering emails, and I get to do podcasts like this or pop down to the local news station. And then at night, I head off and I teach some classes. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
That's great. How old is your son?
He's 5. So we're doing the dance with kindergarten starting next year.
Excellent. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
I remember those years.
He's going to be fine walking out the door the first day, and I will be devastated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the devastation just continues as they get older.
Right?
I wrote a blog post about this the other week that, just sending my son up a mountain when he was going for ski lessons, on a chairlift by himself. The instructor wasn't even, and I was like, oh my God, you're on a mountain. You're very far from me at this point. And I just have to kind of keep fingers crossed that you are capable and ready for this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So deep breaths. So can you then tell us a little bit about what Savvy Parents Safe Kids is, what the mission for the business is, and what exactly you do, how you serve parents?
Absolutely. So Kim Estes is our founder, and she started Savvy Parents Safe Kids in 2006. She just saw that there was a real gap between what our schools were teaching or weren't teaching, as the case may be, and what the needs were to educate our children to keep themselves safe. And so, it was just kind of that idea of like, well, stranger danger isn't really going to protect my child. That doesn't teach them anything. I haven't given them any skills. I haven't given them any knowledge. What does it look like to actually prepare your child so that they can avoid dangerous situations, so that they know to trust their own instincts when something makes them feel uncomfortable? How do I practice with my child ahead of time what if situations for things that could happen to them that are kind of scary? And how do I do that in a way so that they're able to think about it and they're able to scaffold some ideas around that without scaring them unnecessarily? So, we've got a couple of catchphrases and taglines that we use with parents. And the first one is that safety shouldn't be scary. There are lots of ways we can have safety conversations with our children without absolutely terrorizing them. Mm-hmm. And the important thing we tell parents about coming to our class is that it's going to be your child's safety made simple. We're going to give you conversation starters. We're going to give you games to play. We're going to give you the vocabulary words so that you can very organically, very naturally make safety part of your family culture and have these conversations, in a way that's not awkward and not forced and not really out of the norm for you and your child.
When you're talking about safety, are you specifically talking about safety when you're with strangers? Are you talking about physical safety, emotional safety? Like, how do you define that?
We start with our preschool parents and our preschool kiddos, and we're talking about body safety and creating that initial concept of consent and those initial ideas of, hey, you have instincts about being safe or being comfortable, and we're going to follow that. And so all of that is kind of teaching ideas for what are conversations we should be having with other adults before our kiddo goes to a play date? What are the rules we're going to give our child for, playing in their own neighborhood or, having experiences at the local park or when we go to the store or the zoo. We're going to talk about body safety at home. How are we addressing our private parts? How do we talk about that? What are rules about our bodies and our private parts? Because there's some really hard and fast rules. And then we go from there as our kiddos get older and we're going to, how do those rules change or are they the same if our kiddo goes to a sleepover? What are questions we can ask our children to find out what's going on with them or how they feel about something? How are we going to teach them to use the internet safely? How are we going to kind of be along for that ride with them? What does it look like for our kiddos when bullying starts either at school or online? We know that so much of that is online. As parents, what rules do we need to implement as our child moves into that middle school or that tween phase? And so, a lot of what we're doing, Debbie, really is focused around preventing child sexual abuse. And so we say safety, but, it applies to so many different areas of, hey, how do you get yourself out of a situation when you're not comfortable being there anymore? What if this sleepover was supposed to be a fun birthday party celebration, but now there's peer pressure or there's bullying or, kids are watching things I don't want to watch or they're saying things that aren't kind. So it's just a lot of different ideas and concepts behind how are we going to teach our kids to keep themselves safe when we're not there.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, it's bringing up a situation that happened during this very same ski lesson.
Yes.
And my child was gone all day. And when I picked him up, the ski instructor dropped him off where we were staying. And I was waiting for him and he skied up and he's like, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. And he was like in a panic because he had to go to the bathroom. And he was trying to whip off his ski boots and dash into the house. He's like, I've never had to pee this bad in my life. And he was kind of a wreck. And after he had taken care of what he needed to take care of and we were back in our room, I said, well, what happened? Did you tell your instructor? And he said, yeah, I did several times, but he just said, that we're only going to do 2 more runs or, kind of brushed him off. And Asher was the only kid in the group. There were 4 adults in the group and he was the only child. Oh. And again, he's 12. And I just had to say, in the future, know that you can put your foot down and say, you know what, I'm sorry, but I can't wait. I need to go now. Right. And we have to figure something out. And I kind of had that moment of I've never really taught you this before, that self-advocacy piece and how important it is. So I know that's related to something different, a different topic, but it's still that idea of kids don't kind of come wired to know that their voices deserve to be heard.
Exactly. Well, and we share that with parents too. Your child cannot create the answer to a new situation. Not every time can they create the right answer or an appropriate answer. Especially when I'm teaching the preschool classes, we joke a little bit about, they've only been around the sun 3 times. If you lose them in the middle of the superstore, they don't know what to do. And, to think about as an adult, when you are afraid or you have that moment of panic or something happens that's unexpected, that even as an adult, we struggle with what to do in situations. So imagine what that would be like for a child who's maybe even never considered, it never occurred to me that I could get separated from my parents at the zoo or and like your son, it never occurred to me that I would tell someone I need to use the restroom and they would tell me no, just like, right. I mean, an adult told me no. So now I have no further options.
Right.
And so one of the things we're always encouraging parents to do, little parents and big parents too, even our high school parents, play what if games. Ask lots of different what if scenarios around the different things that they could ever possibly experience, and especially those safety situations. And you could say that to Asher. Well, what if the next time you're at a ski lesson, you tell somebody you need something and they say no to you? What else do you think you could do? What's your next choice? What would you do different next time, kind of thing?
Yeah, I love what you said, that they can't create the answers to a new situation.
They can't.
Yeah, they don't even have any context for it. And therefore, they're probably not even thinking of solutions. They're just dealing with what is, and that's it. So interesting. So I want to get into some specifics in terms of some of the tips that you share with parents. You have this great resource called the Super 10, which actually this came across my radar when Asher was probably about 5 or 6. And we used to live in Seattle. And I know that you guys are based in Seattle. And a friend of mine, I don't know if she emailed me or gave me a copy, and she said, these are some really great tips and good things to talk with your kids about. And so I did print it out at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, these are really good. But, and until that point, I don't think I had thought about any of these things. So it just was not on my radar. But I was wondering if we could kind of walk through this resource, because it's something you offer on your website, and it's just such practical, simple tips, but they're so important. I can see how each one of them would make such a big difference. So could we go through those?
Absolutely. And I want to say too, for parents out there listening, the Super 10 is something that our founder, Kim Estes, worked to create and to share with people, working with one of our mentors, and her name is Patty Fitzgerald. And she is a wonderful, wonderful children's safety book author. So for anybody listening who's got kids ages 3 to 10, look up Patty Fitzgerald, because she's got just great, great safety books that you can share with your kids. And it's going to cover the concepts that we are talking about right now in this Super 10. That's
great. Thank you. And for listeners, I'll make sure that the links to Patty's books are in the show notes, so you don't have to be writing that down right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So, okay, well, let's dive into this then. I guess just starting with the first one, I am special and I have the right to be safe at all times.
And the foundation of this is just, you have instincts to keep yourself safe. And if you don't feel safe, I believe you and I honor that. We want our kids we want them to listen to their instincts. We want them to know that they're real, and we want them to know that their instincts to protect themselves and to keep themselves safe, that's a real thing, and it's important.
In your experience, do kids kind of recognize that they have instincts, or do we have to show them what they are or give them examples of how to tune into that?
My little guy at 5, and we've been reading these safety books for 2 or 3 years now, he hasn't shown me that he's recognized it yet, but he's got all the vocabulary around it. And I feel like that's a good first place to start. Mm-hmm. Patty Fitzgerald talks about the uh-oh feeling. And when you have the uh-oh feeling, that's your instincts, that's your own body sending you a warning message. And so my little guy can talk about the uh-oh feeling, and he can recognize when somebody else in a story or in a movie, I think maybe they have the uh-oh feeling. He's never told me himself that he's having the uh-oh feeling, but he's recognizing when somebody else might.
Oh, that's so interesting. Darren and I are prepping for a big move at the moment, so we are fully leaning into any and everything that simplifies things, and that absolutely includes mealtimes. At a time when my executive functioning skills are being pushed to the limit, even planning and executing dinner for our family these days can feel like a really big lift. That's why I'm especially grateful for Green Chef, a meal service that offers pre-measured and prepped ingredients to my door. Each box is packed with foods you can feel good about, like whole fruits and vegetables, plus lean protein and whole grain options. In fact, one of the things I love most about Green Chef is that they offer options that prioritize gut and brain health, with science-backed recipes that feature ingredients like fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3 fatty acids. During this time of lots of stress, it feels really grounding to know we're supporting ourselves nutritionally. I will take all the support I can get. And Green Chef doesn't just cover dinner recipes. I can add high-quality breakfasts, lunches, and snacks to my weekly box from Green Market. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Symbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Symbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon, and that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Symbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Symbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off. I think it's one of those things too, and now I'm remembering an Oprah episode I saw so many years ago, probably when I was in high school or college, but about how a lot of women in particular tend to ignore their own feeling because we want to be polite or we don't want to offend someone. And so I imagine you have to kind of also help parents reconnect with their own inner voices too.
Exactly. When I go in and when I talk to, I do like a lot of morning mommy groups, and the moms in particular, they're just like, oh, I know, I'm always so concerned that I'll hurt someone's feelings or that I'll offend them or that someone won't like me or that they'll think I'm this or that or the other. And one of the big things we tell parents, and I've been saying for years, is like, hey, here's the deal. Now that you're the parent, here's the deal. I am willing to be awkward. I am willing to embarrass myself. I am willing to say something uncomfortable if it will save my child from experiencing uncomfortable, awkward, or embarrassed. I will say that thing so that they don't have to have that experience. That's what being a parent is. That's, I will ask the embarrassing safety question so that my child will be safe. And so, yeah, for women especially, we've got to overcome that. We've got to stop worrying about what do other people see and what do other people think when they look at me. Look at your child and what do they see? What do they think? That's got to be the focus when we're trying to keep them safe.
Yep, absolutely. Great. Okay, well, we've actually covered 2 of the Super 10. Let's keep going down the list. What's next?
You've got to know your name, address, phone number, and caregivers' names. Obviously, I don't expect your 2-year-old to rattle off their street address, but we can start learning phone numbers, when our kiddo is 3. We know that they can memorize and sing a million nursery rhymes, and they can learn a phone number the same way too. So, I always tell parents, when you're in the car, practice singing that phone number back and forth to them from the front seat, and they'll get it pretty quickly.
That's a great idea. Just put it to music. Music is the key. Makes so much sense.
I brought home our preschool evaluation on my son just this morning, and sure enough, checked off the box for I know what city I live in, I know mom and dad's first and last names, and they're on the form. Teacher wrote down my phone number. So yeah, he's got it.
That's impressive.
I was excited. It was a proud mommy moment.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know that my child knows my phone number. So that's okay. So I have some work to do. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Let's keep going. What's the next one?
I never go anywhere or take anything from someone I don't know. And it doesn't need to be frightening. Gifts are so exciting. If you get a gift from somebody, please make sure mom and dad are there when you open it because we want to see what you got too.
Right.
It's just how you have these conversations. And at the same time as they get a little bit older, we're going to tell them, which is the next one down. I always check first to get permission before I go anywhere or get into a car, even if it is with someone I know. We break that one down with our older kids, and it's even if you've gotten a ride with them before, you have to ask every time. Even if you've gone into their house before, you have to ask every time. And Debbie, this is because we know that 93% of the time children are being sexually abused. It's because it's somebody that's very well known to them.
Right.
So that's why we're telling our children, every time you get a ride, you have to ask. Every time you go into someone's home, you have to ask. We have to make sure we know where they are all the time. We have to make sure that there's intention all of the time, just so that, we don't find ourselves in that situation where we find out that our child has been abused by someone that's known to them because we weren't necessarily paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like the way these are phrased too, and just the way you explain talking to your child about it. You don't have to say what could happen. You just say, this is what we do. We always need to know where, we need to know where you are. We need to know who you're with. And that's how we stay connected and keep our family safe. And that's our value, and just leave it at that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Safety doesn't have to be scary. We can teach you family safety rules. We can create a culture of safety for our family, but it doesn't have to involve terror.
Right. Okay, great. Let's keep going then.
Number 5, my bathing suit areas are private. We do teach parents, absolutely use correct anatomical terms. A couple different reasons for that. Number 1, there's nothing shameful about your body. You've got elbows, you've got a forehead, you've got toes and knees. Let's go ahead and name everything, because we know as children get older too, there's going to be lots of nicknames, and there's a lot of fun in childhood revolving around body parts. But we want to make sure our children know the names to all of their anatomies, because one of the ways that predators do come at our children is using really, really cutesy nicknames for our private parts. And so we want to make sure that children aren't misled. We want to make sure they know exactly what someone's intentions are and what they're talking about. And we follow this up with kind of like the second part of this rule, or how we would go deeper with this rule, is to say that there are no such thing as games where people show each other their private parts. And there's no such thing as games where people touch each other's private parts. Mm-hmm. And we just want to make sure that they have that full and complete understanding of, your body is private. And we can talk about, how moms and dads will sometimes help us in the bathroom or the bathtub or getting dressed. And that if we go to the doctor might look at our body, and the doctor might look at our private parts, but that mom and dad are there when the doctor is doing that. So we want to be explicit and clear with them, and depending on what that looks like for your family system, whether there's other caretakers or there's other relatives in the home, but just to make sure that children understand, no games where we look at private parts and no games where we're touching private parts.
That's all you need to know. Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Great.
Because they're private. End of story.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's keep going down the list here.
Number 6, I don't have to be polite if someone tries to bully me into doing something that makes me feel uncomfortable or scared. And this kind of goes back to that situation with your son where he told somebody what he needed or what he wanted and kind of got shut down. And so we want to, as our kids get older, just reinforce this idea, even if it's a relative, even if it's someone you love, even if it's an adult, which kind of leads into number 7. It's okay to say no. We don't have to do things that we don't want to do if it makes us feel uncomfortable. And our children are going to get a little older and they're going to want to argue with us. I don't really want to unload the dishwasher. Or I don't really feel like going to school today. Mm-hmm. And all of that is normal. But we're really talking about, is somebody trying to get you to break a family safety rule? Is somebody trying to get you to do something that feels unsafe? Is somebody asking you to do something that mom and dad would say no? So we want to make sure that they know it's okay to say no, even if you're telling an adult no.
Right. And I imagine, you start with teaching these when kids are really young. And my experience with Asher and with other kids that I know is when they're young, they tend to be very kind of rule-based and, yes. And so I imagine that if you really reinforce these concepts over and over as they're younger, when they get older, it doesn't feel like you're kind of trying to oppress them, but it's more that it's just part of who they are. It's kind of weaved into their internal value system.
And that's why we tell parents so much easier to start when they're little. Because very small children in preschool, when you give them a new concept, they always kind of think about it and they're like, okay. So, it's so much easier to have this conversation and lay this foundation when they're really young and pliable and, accepting of things that mom and dad tell them without wanting to argue or debate.
Right. Exactly. Great.
So, number 8, I don't keep secrets, especially from my caregivers. What we're asking our adults and caregivers to do here is to remove the word secret from your family vocabulary list. You can use surprise. It might be a surprise at a present or a surprise at the holidays, or we're going on vacation and it's a surprise, or I've made you something and it's a surprise, which is great. In the end, everybody always knows what the surprise is and everybody's happy about it. And we can also tell kids that something is private. It's very private that auntie and uncle aren't going to be married anymore. That's not something that we're going to talk about with the neighbors right now. Or, it's very private that daddy doesn't have a job right now. That's not something that we're going to share with our friends at school. That's just a private topic of conversation that we'll have at home. But we want to make sure our kids kind of know the difference. They are absolutely going to have secrets with their little friends. Having secrets is totally part of childhood. We just want to make sure that we haven't given them this idea that adults and children keep secrets together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And imagine it's also parents not keeping secrets from each other or, so they're modeling that same behavior. That's just not what we do in our family, period.
Exactly. Our family is transparent. Our family is honest. Our family tells each other what's going on. So and there's ways where this is going to be so amazing and so helpful as your kids become teenagers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered, the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything, because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
Great. Okay, so what's the last one that we have not covered here?
We have not covered, I always take a buddy and know what to do if I ever get lost. And the getting lost concept is a big one for parents. You know, that fear of like losing your child in the mega store or losing your child, you know, in the large outdoor park. So, you know, as children get older and they want to use the restroom by themselves, or they want to, you know, place their own order at the restaurant or whatever that is, we're going to encourage them to take a buddy. But when they're little, we have to start talking about what to do if they ever get lost. And the really easy way to do that is to play a what if game, but remove them from the equation. And so, you know, with your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old in the cart at the grocery store, you could play the what if game with them and say, what if Grandma came to the grocery store with us today, but she couldn't find us? What do you think Grandma should do? And basically, it's just this great way to get the wheels turning, but we haven't, you know, looked into their little face and go, what do you think you should do if you ever get lost in the grocery store kind of thing, you know? And your child's like, what? I'm going to get lost in the grocery store? So it's just this great way to kind of, you know, get those gears turning and get them to start to think about, oh, well, I never thought about that. What should someone do if they couldn't find their family in the grocery store? You know, oh, it's so busy. We're at the park today. What if Uncle had come to the park with us today, but he couldn't find us? What do you think Uncle should do? And so just to move through those what if scenarios around getting lost so that they know, gosh, if I ever get lost, I need to just hold still and stay in one place. And I should look around for another family with kids and ask them for help. But they don't know to do that unless we've given them those options and given them that help and given them that guidance for, hey, this is what you can do to fix, you know, this is kind of like a problem-solving equation. Oh, the problem is you cannot find me for a minute. The solution is hold still, ask another family with children for help. So it's a lot of problem-solving when we're talking about safety.
Yeah, and that whole idea of losing a child, I know you said that's a big one, and it certainly is for me. It's kind of the thing I would wake up in the middle of the night.
Scenario, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that is out of all of these, I don't know that I'm doing a good job on them, although I intend to start now. But but the one about what would you do if you get lost? You know, we travel a lot, so we're often in new cities, often teeming with tourists. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
and so I often will just say, okay, it's very busy, stick close to me, but what are you going to do again if we get separated? And sometimes he remembers, sometimes he doesn't. So it's good to keep asking the question and make sure that you reinforce what that plan is.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, this is such a great resource, and thank you for walking us through it. And for listeners, definitely grab this. It's a lovely PDF download that you can grab from the Savvy Parents Safe Kids website. And I encourage you to start working with it. I have one question. I know I want to be conscious of time, but I wanted to just ask, I know that you don't specialize in working with differently wired kids or parents who are raising differently wired kids, but that I also know that you have worked with or addressed groups of these parents. So in your experience, have you kind of come up across any special considerations or concerns from parents, or just extra things that we should keep an eye out for?
Absolutely. And, you know, as we talk with parents, as I talk with different groups, as I'm talking with, you know, specialists or people who work in the area, we're very aware of and very mindful of the fact that children who are maybe, you know, we talk about neurotypical or neurodivergent, but differently developing children are they're at risk, that, you know, and they are a soft target and they are very vulnerable. And we're going to use a lot of the same safety ideas. I understand, you know, some children cannot read social cues, or maybe your child is nonverbal. So there are going to be different things that we're doing. Maybe we're going to use visual cues to support a verbal message. We're not going to use abstract concepts. Instead, we're going to use very simple concepts as we're teaching these things. Most importantly, we tell parents is don't just take someone else's word for it when they're telling you that the people working with your child have a background check. Don't just take their word for it that an environment is safe or anything else like that. Unfortunately, parents just have to be extra vigilant and extra diligent in following up those people that are working with your children and that are having hands-on access to your children. Any interactions that they're having with your child really need to be in an observable environment. And we really encourage parents, make unannounced visits. Drop in on occasions when they're not expecting you. This is a great way you can signal to the people working with your children, I'm paying attention and I'm involved. We also want to make sure that, field trips are really great, but we don't suggest parents and families do that if they aren't also able to attend. Anytime an adult is offering to take your child somewhere without you, that's a red flag. That's a warning sign. I'm sorry, Debbie, there's so much. I'm like, what else? Where else could I go?
No, this is great. I mean, it's just so many things to think about, but I think they're important things that, just to kind of to be aware of. And just going back to that idea of really helping these kids learn to tune into their inner voice. And yes, a lot of differently wired kids do struggle with reading those social skills. And so, a lot of us are already doing extra work around supporting that and learning to read people's faces and expressions and moods and what do you think's going on. And I guess, this could be weaved into part of that work. Just even reading the energy in a room, guessing somebody's intention, and then also always bringing it back to how do you feel in this situation? Does that make you feel safe? Does it make you feel concerned? Does it make you feel calm? Whatever it is. So It's kind of ongoing work, I imagine.
And that's just, and for each child, they need to be taught these safety ideas in the same manner that they are currently best learning, in the same manner that they're being taught, their other life skills or their school education. And so, even if your child is nonverbal, they still may be able to, use a hand as a stop sign when they don't like something that's happening around them. So it's, whatever you're doing, it's a flip book, it's a picture book, whereas your 10-year-old might say, no, you can't touch my private parts, that we might just ask, a child who's neurodivergent, you could say no, or just that you can make a loud noise, or that you can use your stop sign hand. But it's got to be whatever is already in line with how they're comfortable learning and the way that you see them progressing and developing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, listen, before we go, where should people go to get in touch with you or learn more about the work that you guys are doing?
Thanks, Debbie. They can come to our website, which I know you'll include, the Savvy Parents Safe Kids website. They can find us on Facebook. We do a lot of interacting on Facebook. Parents will send us news articles wanting to know, what do we think about this? Or we will post up a news article with a safety tip. You can reach us there. And from the website as well, you can directly email us. So if you have a question, if you need resources, if you're looking for materials, contact me directly. I would love to help, support, walk along, be involved in any way, shape, or form.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jill, so much. This has been really insightful, important information, and I'm grateful that you were able to share it with our listeners today. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to share this. I eat and sleep and breathe and live and whatever we can do for our kids, whatever makes one child safer. So I'm just overwhelmed that you gave me a chance to run my mouth today. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. For the show notes for this episode, including links to the Savvy Parents Smart Kids website where you can download a copy of the Super 10 Rules for Safety, visit the show notes page at tiltparenting.com/session58. And lastly, here's my weekly pitch to ask you to leave an honest review or rating for the podcast on iTunes. It only takes a minute and it really helps us get more visibility in the crowded podcast space. And if you'd like to join our awesome supporters by making a small contribution to our Patreon campaign, which helps to fund some of the production costs associated with this podcast, visit patreon.com/tiltparenting. Thanks again for listening. For more information on Tilt Parenting, visit www.tiltparenting.com.
Hey, are you a parent of a teenager? Are you feeling overwhelmed about how to be what they need while also holding limits and boundaries that keep them safe? Are you tired of conversations that negate how messy this season of parenting is? Well, I've got you. My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Every week, I come to you with an interview digging into tough topics with experts I trust and solo shows that go deep into the personal growth and mindset needed to raise teens in a way that grows them into confident, capable young people. I am not afraid of getting real about the intersection of conscious parenting and the teen years, while also bringing in vulnerability, humor, and lightness. I'm walking the path with you and honored to serve. Listen to Joyful Courage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts.